Okay, I think we're ready to get started. First, I want to say thank you very much to Paul Ramey for putting all this together. Paul has done an awful lot of work in recruiting us as speakers and recruiting the space and recruiting you as an audience. And I know that Paul has just put an awful lot of effort into this. Paul, thank you so much. I'm Les Cory. I'm the head of the Share Foundation at UMass Dartmouth. The Share Foundation is an organization that financially supports the UMass Dartmouth Center for Rehabilitation Engineering. Since 1981, the center has provided adaptive equipment for people having a very wide range of abilities and needs. The folks that we began working with first were those who had difficulty in independently communicating. Our first client was a woman with cerebral palsy, and her means of communication was this iBoard. Her mother would hold this board up in front of her eyes, and Linda would move her eyes from letter to letter on the board, and her mother on the other side would see what she was trying to say and spell it out. And this was the way in which Linda communicated when I first met her back in 1981. 1981, technology wasn't what it is today. Al Gore had not yet invented the internet, and there were a lot of other things that weren't around. Working together with a colleague, I built a communication system which employed at that time a Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 3 home computer. And I believe that that first client, whose name is Linda, and I can use her name because she's all over our brochures. She lives down in Little Compton, Rhode Island. Linda was enabled to communicate by means of that computer, and I believe was probably the first person in the world ever to communicate independently by means of a personal computer. 1981, IBM hadn't put its first personal computer on the market at that time, so we were a little bit ahead of the usual technology. A number of companies sprang up after that, building communication devices. Words Plus was one out in Sunnyvale, California. Their most famous client was a gentleman over in England who you have probably heard about. His name is Steve Hawkins. And Steve used a Words Plus system for quite some time. More recently, used a system that was pioneered over in England. In the interim, he used a system called Opossum. The communication system that Linda used was referred to as a single-switch communication device. A lot of our users are single-switch users, which means we have identified one single thing that they can do to control something. And one might wonder, by means of one single switch, how can you control anything other than perhaps to turn a light on and off? Well, with one single switch, you can do an awful lot. It's not a matter of what you do, it's a matter of when you do it. And I'd like to demonstrate to you a single switch communication device which will give you the idea of how scanning devices function. In Linda's case, she uses a switch that she controls with her head because she's able to control the motion of her head. Other people control single switch devices by such a diverse means as sipping on a drinking straw, raising and lowering their eyebrows, smiling and frowning, today shifting their eye gaze or blinking their eyes, and most recently by changing their thought patterns. And people ask, you have computer systems that you control by changing your thought patterns? And the answer is yes. I'd love to tell you, and we have dozens and dozens of users of such system, but that wouldn't be the right thing to say because it's not true. The thought control communication devices today are kind of a solution in search of a problem, because most people have a higher functioning ability than that of changing their thought patterns, a functioning physical ability, and it's not easy to control a computer by changing your thought patterns. Now, lest people get the wrong idea, you do not think of a tree and have the computer write out or speak T-R-E-E. No, doesn't work that way. Basically, what one does is to change one's thought patterns in order to trigger a single switch. So the thought-controlled devices are no more than switches, as would be an eyebrow switch or a smile and frown switch or virtually any other switch that one might see. But the question was, how do you go about controlling something by means of a single switch. Okay, well, we see a scanning spot moving across the top, and I'm going to use a switch which is on my control panel here, but you could consider that the switch could be anything. Let's suppose that I want to say yes, and I notice that yes is in the second column, so I'm going to press the switch when the spot is over the second column, and it's going to totally ignore me. Okay, I tell you what, I have a choice. I can spend the next 5 minutes troubleshooting this, or we can talk about what it's supposed to do. And I'd rather tell you about what it's supposed to do than to sit here and try and fix it. Now, what I said I was going to do is to show you how to say yes. I'm sure if I reboot the system, it's going to work, because it did work. Some of you can attest to that 5 minutes ago. I would press the switch when the spot is over the first column. The spot, instead of moving horizontally as it's moving now, would move vertically down the column, and when it got down to the word yes, I'd press the switch a second time. Now, press the switch is something I would say if, in fact, you were pressing a switch. Linda presses her switch with her head. Other people, quote, press their switch by blinking their eyes or by doing whatever it is that they're most able to do. We have within the system a series of phrases, and the user is able to change those phrases. These are some that I selected earlier at random just to see what it was going to do. If you want to select a word beginning with K, like kick me for not making this work properly, then you would select this column by energizing a switch when the spot was over the third column. The spot would move down that column, and when it got to the letter K, hit the switch a second time, and the screen would fill with words beginning with the letter K, arranged in alphabetical order. The user has the ability to change the dictionary, to add words, to delete words, to add phrases, to delete phrases, and all of the things that the user can bring up on the screen. The user has the option of saving, to be recalled later, sending to a printer to be printed, or spoken by means of a speech synthesizer. Those of you who hang around long enough, I'll make this work, and you can hear what it sounds like. There's been an evolution in synthetic speech over the last many years. Linda's first system sounded like a robot in a barrel. If you were accustomed to listening to it, you could more or less make sense of it. And if you weren't, then it was just so much noise out there in the background. A number of years ago, I took command of a military unit down in Savannah, Georgia. Now, I know they were all speaking English, but it was 2 weeks before I understood anything that anyone was saying to me. Similarly, if you are not accustomed to listening to speech synthesizers, you may not wholly understand what the synthesizer is saying. The mark of a good synthesizer is when you can call a pizza shop and they don't hang up on you. The mark of an excellent speech synthesizer is when you can call a pizza shop, order the pizza, and have it delivered. Because generally, when synthesizers are on the telephone, someone presumes that it's a prank call. But today, synthesizers are much, much better than they were back in 1981 when we were using a Voltrax system. Anyway, with a single switch device, you can do a number of things, not the least of which, if I were to go over to key mode, this system would change, and the first column would say such things as mouse up, mouse down, mouse left, mouse right, mouse click, and so forth. What's all this mouse stuff? Well, Linda today is still using a computer system, and she is still controlling it by pressing her head against the switch. However, she actually today has two computers. Initially, the objective was to enable her to communicate independently to produce synthetic speech. Today, that's not enough. Today, we want her to be able to control a computer. So she has two computers. One is just like yours and mine. The other is this computer, which becomes her keyboard and mouse on the second computer. So this program becomes a keyboard and mouse to control a second computer. And anything you can do with your computer, she can do with hers, except that she only has one switch. Imagine that your computer had only the space bar. That's all, nothing else. Nothing else, just the space bar. Well, that's effectively what she has. Today we have literally thousands of users of technology similar to that. Initially, the goal was to enable her to communicate. But with today's technology, you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do a few years ago. You can do a lot of things with things that you can lose in your pocket. For example, what the heck is this? Well, it's a TV remote control is what it is. I bought a bunch of these to give away to people who participated in one of our fundraisers. And I have a number of them left. And we've found a lot of people who are interested in having them. I actually think I have one in my pocket that hasn't been opened, I think. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. How many of you carry a TV remote in your pocket? And why would you? Well, I can tell you why you might want to carry this in your pocket. First, at home, this is a lot easier to use than my remote because my remote has got, I don't know, 36 buttons, and I can never find the one I want. In fact, I'm not always certain which direction to point it to get it at the TV, and I'm sure that some of you are in the same situation. This one simply has power on, power off, channel up, channel down, volume up, volume down, and that's all one needs. So why do I carry it in my pocket? Well, have you ever been sitting in someone's waiting room? And there's an infomercial on? Or you just don't like what's on? Now, some of you remember the old remote controls where you had to look in a book and find a code, and the first code never worked right, but sooner or later you found a code that worked. Well, this one you simply point it at the TV set and you hold the mute button down. And when the TV mutes, it's programmed. That's all there is to that. And so I've had fun going into Dunkin' Donuts and now I kind of got, tell you what, I got faked out. We had dinner at a country club a couple of weeks ago, and there's the TV, and I said, we'll see what we can do with that. So I was able to mute it, and I was able to control the volume. But when I went to change the channel, it brought up a message saying this TV is centrally controlled. So, okay, couldn't do that. So why do I care that there is such an animal as this? Because we modify things like this to make them into single switch devices. Because a person like Linda, who doesn't have the ability to use her hands, isn't going to be able to control a remote with 36 buttons, or even one with this many buttons. But if we can bring something like this up on the screen and interface it to this device so that she sees on the screen these same entries and they scan one at a time. Do you want to turn the power on? Hit the switch now. Do you want to turn the power off? Hit the switch now. Do you want to turn the volume up, the volume down, the channel up, the channel down, and so forth? Linda has the disability that she is not able to use her hands and she's not able to speak. Many of the people that we work with have the ability to speak, but they don't have the ability to use their hands. Why might that be? Well, this might be a person who is spinal cord injured, and as a consequence of that spinal cord injury, maybe doesn't do much from the shoulders down, but is perfectly good from the shoulders up. And for those kind of folks, today, there are such things as this, and believe me, you don't want one of these, but this is a speech-controlled, a voice-controlled TV controller. So you say to it, power on, or it's actually you say TV on, or you say TV off. After you've used this for a while, you'll probably say TV off quite a lot. Yeah. But you can also say channel up and channel down and volume up and volume down, and you can program it to do things beyond that. This is a commercially available product. We built things like this back in the days that we needed to because you couldn't buy them. But today, more and more, our job becomes not producing product like this, but producing interface to products. Taking things that are commercially available and modifying them such that people with some disability, some non-functioning body part, are able to make use of these systems. Today, when by the way, as long as we're talking TV, here is a scanning TV controller. This is a commercially available product. It's about $400. But it scans. The lights on it, light in sequence, and the lights say on, off. If it's on and you hit the switch when that light is light, then it turns it off, or if it's off, it turns it on. If you selected that, you must mean it wasn't doing what you wanted it to do. Kind of like my cat, always on the wrong side of the door. So all you know is when the cat meows that it wants to be on the other side of the door. It doesn't matter which side it is, it's just it wants to be on the other side. So the on-off turns the TV on if it's off, or off if it's on. And we have channel up, channel down, volume down, and quiet. Another word for mute. Versions of this will also enable you to control, I was going to say VCRs, but today I have to say DVD players. So you can control other devices, other things within your home with single switch devices. Not only can one control TVs with little things like this, you can also control things. That's your cue to. The radio reception down here is not good. Here is a control device. You might like to have one of these in your home.
Marty Walsh would take issue with John Connolly's claim.
Okay, so we just turned the radio on, and thankfully we can also turn it off. Your job is done. Thank you. You can control up to 256 different things with little modules like these. And little modules like these can be interfaced to software packages so that what you see on the screen is lamp number 1. Well, let's just outline some of the things that are available with this technology. And first off, let me say, this technology was not designed specifically for people with disabilities. It's designed for people who are lazy, like me. I don't have to get up to turn on the lamp. I can just push the button and say, let's go, even without touching it. How about that? So you can turn things on and off. What kinds of things? This comes from a company called X10. So if you're a web person and you're interested at all, just go to X10, and you will see some of the things that they have to offer. They typically will sell an introductory package for about $25, which consists of a controller and a number of modules. What do you do with modules? Well, you plug lamps into them, or you plug radio into it, a TV or a CD player. And you can then control all those things with little handheld devices, or if you have a lot of things, then something with a lot of buttons that's going to look like a TV remote control. X10 technology is fairly inexpensive. A typical first controller is about $15, and then modules after that are only $5 or $10 each. You can do things with X10 that you would otherwise do in some other way, such as control your ceiling fan, turn lights on and off within your home. That didn't turn you on. Turn lights on and off in your neighbor's home, which also means they can turn lights on and off in your home if you happen to be on the same side of the transformer and you're using similar modules. You can motor drive your drapes, so you can open and close your drapes. You can, stop me when you stop believing me, by the way. You can feed the goldfish. Yep. Yeah, nope, that's good. You can buy the goldfish feeder and the cat feeder and the dog feeder and put new water in the dog's bowl. All of this is available through X10. You can have surveillance outside your door, which you can then direct to your TV set so you can see who's ringing your doorbell and decide whether or not you want to push the button to lock and unlock your door. For people who are able-bodied, technology makes things easier. For people who are disabled, technology makes things possible. Linda can't operate her drapes through X10, she could. She can't control her ceiling fan or her thermostat. Through X10, she could. And all of this can be interfaced to a simple computer system. Now today, to a greater and greater degree, we're moving away from computers to tablets. This happens to be an iPad, and it happens to have shut itself off. And I don't know where the on-off button is. There it is. It says it's 1:28, so I've got another couple of minutes, and I'm supposed to be asking you for questions. Slide to unlock. Here's something called tap to talk. So I've tapped. Start. This particular piece of software is designed for a child. Play.
I want to play with blocks. I want to listen to my iPod.
Here, the implication is that the person using this has the physical dexterity to use this pointer. But these icons can be made to scan just as the software package that I showed you earlier can scan. And not all the software packages are as simple as this one. Here's one that's a little bit more involved. This one is called Verbalize. And it gives you a bunch of words that you can choose from. So if I wanted to say, and I'll regret picking something, but I like that, and I find the word I sitting there, that's good enough, and there's the word like. And that, what do you know, I got lucky. And now I can press speak.
I like that.
I like that. This one, the volume level is lower on this one than it is on the other one. But today we're mounting iPads and similar tablet computers on people's wheelchairs to enable a portability that wasn't possible a few years ago when computers were much, much bigger. My first computer, by the way, would not have fit in this room. It cost $238,000, and it had 4K of memory, not 4 meg, not 4 gig, 4K. So technology has changed somewhat over the years, and technology will continue to change. What is going to drive the technology of tomorrow, you're not going to want to hear this, but the thing that's going to drive the technology of tomorrow are games. There are already games that kids use that they control with joysticks and single switches. There are already games available that you control without touching anything. There are already games around that you control by shifting your eye gaze. And there are games soon to hit the market that you will control by changing your thought patterns. Kids will wear a helmet, which have 2 or 3 sensors in the helmet. And initially, the system will sense the frequency of oscillation of brain waves, which is fairly easy to do. There's a company at Brown University, there's an organization at Brown University working on a project called BrainGate. And BrainGate has created a spin-off program called Cyberkinetics. And Cyberkinetics is doing brain implants today. And one of their first brain implants was on one of my clients, a woman who's been on TV a number of times. Her name is Kathy. You may have seen her. And she is controlling things by changing her thought patterns. Their ultimate objective is to enable a quadriplegic, a spinal injured quadriplegic, to be able to control systems that will drive their muscles to enable people who are spinal cord injured ultimately to be able to walk. Most of you, at some point in your life have undergone an electrical shock. You put your fingers where you weren't supposed to. Now, today that happens with decreasing frequency, so maybe there are people here who have never experienced an electrical shock. But if you have, maybe it was due to static electricity. You made the mistake of rubbing the cat and then trying to turn the light on. Usually what happens is that your muscles contract. That's because your muscles work on electricity. And if a person were able to control the electrical shock that was presented to various muscles, then a person could be enabled to walk by means of a computer system. Now again, computer system. Until recently, I was a professor of computer engineering at UMass Dartmouth. And they say, what did you teach? And I said, well, I taught computer design. And the usual reaction was, well, haven't all the computers already been designed? What's computer design? Well, when I say computer and you hear computer, we're probably not talking the same language, because you're thinking of computer like that laptop or like this tablet. And when I say computer, I'm thinking about the kind of computer of which there are 70 in a modern automobile. There's 70 computers in my car? How did those get there? Well, they control all sorts of things. They control the seats, and they control the mirror, and they control the audio system, and they control the transmission, and they control the throttle, and they control all sorts of things. And those computers today are the size of pencil erasers or smaller. And I taught courses to enable people to design those computer systems that went into such things as those little Nike sneakers that light up on red and blue when a kid runs down the corridor in church. Yes, there's a computer there in those shoes. In the couple of minutes that I have left, let me talk about how it is that we interact with clients. First, we need the answer to 2 questions. Those questions sound very simple, but sometimes it takes a long time to get the answers to those 2 questions. The first question is, what are this person's abilities? What do they bring to bear on the problem? This includes such things as their ability to see, to hear, to comprehend, to think, to reason, to move this, that, or something else. And the reason we care about the abilities is because the abilities dictate the inputs to the system. Now, I used to say it dictates the input to the computer, but today every system does not have a computer in it, although most do. If a person's highest functioning ability is to raise and lower their eyebrows, kind of needs to be an eyebrow switch in the midst of all of this thing, and not an eye blink switch, or not a sip switch, or not whatever. So the first question is, what are this person's abilities, in order that we might determine what an appropriate input device would be. We have hung switches on places that I didn't even know people had places. But yes, there are people who can do strange things, strange to me anyway. I can't wiggle my nose, but we have a client who can, and we have a switch there. And there are so many different abilities that people bring to bear on a problem, but those dictate the inputs. Question 2. What are the needs? What are we trying to accomplish here? Does this person live independently and need to be able to call 911? Well, if so, there needs to be a phone dialer in this system. The abilities determine the inputs to the system. The needs determine the outputs. Now, I'm a computer engineer, and we have computer engineering students at the university. I can't go to one of my students and say, we're working with a gentleman who has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I need a computer system. I need to go there and say, I'm working with an individual who has the ability to raise and lower his eyebrows. He needs to be able to speak with a synthetic voice. He needs to be able to lock and unlock the door, and he needs to be able to handle the telephone. And by the way, we haven't mentioned the telephone yet, but just as you can control a TV set through a scanning controller, so also can you control a telephone. If the phone is ringing and someone selects telephone, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that person's trying to answer the phone. So the first switch hit answers the telephone, brings the telephone on. Now, if a person is able to speak, then they just carry on their conversation. If they're not, then the next thing that program should do is to bring up some speech synthesis software to enable a person to say something, which may be something relative to their speech disability. So the person at the other end knows to be patient and wait for a response. So you can control today through X10, through devices that we build, through devices that we buy, and through interfaces that we provide, darn near anything, using almost any ability that you bring to bear on the problem. And I have 6 minutes left to handle any questions that you might have, but let me answer one that hasn't yet been asked. We do not charge for equipment. We do not charge for services. We do not charge for consultation. And how do you do all of that? Well, first, I'm a volunteer and have been for the last 30 years, so I don't get paid. So that part is easy. But I have a staff, and they do get paid. I have a client services coordinator, I have a computer technician, I have an electromechanical engineer, I have an administrative assistant. All those folks get paid. So where does the money come from if you don't charge clients for services? I'm a professional beggar. That's the easiest way I can put it. I talk to the Lions, the Rotaries, the Kiwanis, the Elks, the Knights of Columbus. I eat more chicken dinners than anybody you know. We do have a contract with the Mass Rehab Commission, and through the Independent Living Division, Mass Rehab pays us to provide that equipment and services to people in the central region of Massachusetts. So we effectively come down Route 24, go over to Cape Cod Bay, including Cape Cod and the islands, and we go west as far as Attleboro. So that portion is funded, assuming a person has independent living goals. That portion is funded by the Mass Rehab Commission. The rest of it is funded through grassroots donations. We had a walkathon a couple of weeks ago, raised almost $30,000. Thank you very much. My budget outside of Mass Rehab is very simple. It's $250,000 a year. There are 50 work weeks in a year, 5 work days a week. 50 times 5 is carried to 250. So I have 250 days to raise $250,000. The math is simple. I just have to beg $1,000 every workday. And whereas I would much rather spend my time in the lab designing equipment, whereas I would much rather spend my time in the community working with clients, the majority of my time is spent picking people's pockets. Now your question. Excellent question. How do you help people communicate when they're away from their house and by implication away from their computer? In years past, you didn't. And let me say this about that. This iBoard is still faster than the majority of the communication devices that are on the market today. We have given away about 750 of these. We have them now in 38 different states and 7 countries where we also have electronic equipment. No batteries, no cost. People in the not distant past relied on things like this and 20 questions for a person who had the ability to perhaps nod their head or to make a sound to enable people to communicate. Today, to a much greater degree, we are beginning to get these tablets out in the field, and a lot of people with disabilities today use tablets either in scanning mode or with their hands. But it's an excellent question because it is something that we're just getting a handle on now, providing electronic devices to enable people to communicate beyond the confines of their home. Other questions? Before you leave, take one of these along. This is a brochure that describes the work that we do. Our contact information is on it. For those of you who are taking notes, you can go to www.share, S-H-A-R-E, .umassd, D as in Dartmouth, .edu, www.share.umassd.edu. That will tell you something about the events that we have that are forthcoming. It will also give you some information on some of the people that we have worked with, clients who have expressed a willingness to let us talk about them and the hardware and software that we have provided for them. And on the left-hand side, it will say, Get Help. And you can click on Get Help. That will take you to the Center for Rehabilitation Engineering website, and on there is an application form that you can download and print. Now, I wish I could tell you that. You can fill out that application online and submit it online. You can't. You can't. I've been trying to get the university to give us the ability to do that. We kind of had 2 choices. Do you want the ability to do that, or do you want to be able to receive online donations? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but that was kind of a no-brainer. So you can make a donation online, but you can't fill out that form online. I'm hoping to resolve that problem. Right now, you have to print it out, and mail it in. Attention, the client services coordinator, the instructions are on it. If you can't fill in every block of it, just give us enough information so that we can understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve and what it is that people are trying to obtain from us. We do a lot with recycled computers. Last year we dealt with, 150, something like that, computer systems that came to us through some recycled computers. We used to accept donations of single pieces of equipment. Somebody has a computer and they decided they've outlived it. For the most part, we're not doing that any longer, but thankfully, we found companies who are willing to give us computers literally by the hundreds, which is to say, an insurance company may have 100 computer systems that they want to replace, and we'll take them all. The advantage to us is they're all the same, they all have the same problem. We've figure out how to deal with that one system. We have right now 300 systems presumably coming in from an organization that's because we're down. My technician called me the other day in a big panic. I said, what's the problem? He says, we're running out of computers. I said, you're running out of computers? I was in the lab yesterday. You can't be running out of computers. He says, I've only got 85 left. Those 85 probably will be given to places like senior centers and the like, and we'll start over with this new batch, which I'm told are 3 years old. And why this company is replacing them, I don't know. What happens to the thing that we're really looking for are laptops, because people who live in nursing homes, or in hospitals and the like don't have a lot of space, and laptops are handy. When someone buys a new desktop, they want the old desktop out of the house because it eats up space. When someone buys a new laptop, what do they do with the old one? They put it in the bottom drawer in the bureau because they might need it.
Oh, yeah.
And when does it surface? Long after the battery is beyond charging, that's when it surfaces, and that's when people will call us and say, I have a laptop, it's only 8 years old, I used to use it 5 years ago. And generally we say, sorry, not really useful. You had a question. I'd love to tell you that I have a waiting list of 6 people. I don't. I have a waiting list right now of almost 50. Now, the question is, how do I get on the waiting list and how long is it going to take? I'm debating whether to admit what I'm about to say, but I guess I can. When people come to us seeking service, they fall in one of 4 categories. Now, the top category are those who really need a means of communicating, and they need it now. That person could very well get service the same day, even though there are 50 people on a waiting list. Typically, a person in that situation is someone who has just had an accident, or someone in the advanced stages of Lou Gehrig's disease who may be leaving home, going to an institution, or vice versa. So the priority ones are almost always handled within a week, and frequently within the same day. Priority 2s are those who really need a way to communicate, but it's not a life and death situation. I mean, none of our systems are designed for a life and death situation, frankly. Priority 4 is just another way of saying, we'll take your name, but you're probably never going to hear from us. And that's the part I shouldn't admit, but it's in fact true. You know, the person who calls and says, I get headaches every second Tuesday and I need a computer, that's a priority 4. Go to the website of Ameriphone, and if that doesn't solve your problem, then Ameriphone, A-M-E-R-I-P-H-O-N-E. Ameriphone makes a telephone. They make several phones, but one of their phones is voice operated. The phone is ringing, you say hello, and that answers the phone. Or you can sip on a drinking straw or operate it through a single switch. You can pre-program 20 numbers in the Ameriphone. Is it 400? I think it's about, I'm not sure, it might be 200. You can program 20 numbers in there, and you can scan through those numbers. You put the numbers with the highest priority first, the numbers with the lowest priority last. You energize your control switch by whatever means you energize it. It takes almost any switch that plugs in, and you hit the switch once and it starts scanning. And when the number that you want is presented, is illuminated, you hit the switch again and it dials it. And when you're ready to hang up, if you're using it in voice mode, you could say goodbye and it hangs it up. Or you can, if you're using the switch, you can press the switch and it will hang it up. There are also big button telephones. Go to Benny's. Benny's has a beautiful big button phone for less than $10. Can't hold it. Speakerphone. I established a program in Rhode Island back in 1981. That one is called the Adaptive Telephone Equipment Loan Program, ATEL. If you don't make out any other way, call the Rhode Island ATEL program and say, who's your counterpart in Massachusetts? And we funded the Rhode Island one the same way, except that it was 50 cents on everyone's phone bill with a tiny little piece of information down the bottom that says, if you don't want to pay this 50 cents, just deduct it. You don't have to pay it. Nobody read it. Everybody paid it. And we collected $750,000 in the first year and a half. The lady who just spoke is Randy Sargent, and she has the second half of this program. Randy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Les, and thank you, Paul. I'm actually a stand-in today for the Mass Match coordinator. His name is Kabana Bani, and his name is on the brochures here. So he is on vacation this week, so I'm standing in for him. Again, my name is Randy Sargent. I work for the Mass Rehabilitation Commission. I am also a caregiver of a young man who uses assistive technology. So when I thought about what I was going to speak about today, the subject of assistive technology, it's a really broad topic, and it encompasses almost anything that you can use to make independent living easier. And Les showed us some examples of sort of sophisticated things, but it covers the whole gamut from almost can openers to calendars to all kinds of independent living aids, aids for visual impairment, physical impairment, all kinds of things. So I am just going to show you some examples of assistive technology used by my son. And then I will tell you more about what Match does. Okay, let's see. But I lost, oh, here it is, hold on. Oh. I'm also running this on Okay, there's my son. My son has cerebral palsy, and he uses all kinds of assistive technology throughout his day. He uses assistive technology for mobility. He drives a power wheelchair. He uses assistive technology for speech. That's his speech device. He uses, we have an adapted van. We have an adapted house. He's a wide range of assistive technology user. And I'm just going to go through this. This was a presentation developed, actually. So I live in a one-level house that we say is universally designed. You would never know it by looking at it because it was designed for a woman who had MS. It's fully wheelchair accessible. You would never know it. People love my house. So that's sort of the encouragement. And people get older, and I read this recently. You should look up universal design because it's one of those design philosophies that just makes living easier, whether or not you're a disabled person or an elderly person. So we also have an adapted van because my son uses a power chair. These are examples of communication aids. My son uses a high-tech communication aid called augmentative communication. That one particular one is a Dynavox. It's a $7,000 device that's touch-activated and has speech synthesis, and he presses buttons on it to communicate. He communicates by sign. That's not assistive technology. He communicates using pictures on the right. That is a form of low-tech assistive technology. There's an example, his power chair. He uses an iPad for entertainment, not so much communication, although there are literally probably 100 different communication apps and probably another 50 for activities of daily living and memory aids and all kinds of things. He uses it primarily for entertainment, reading, accessing videos, pictures. He uses what are called AFOs, ankle-foot orthotics. They keep his feet in position when he's standing, for example. That's not him, but that's called a stander, right? When people don't walk, you need to be weight-bearing for good health. That's a stander. He can access a computer using a joystick on the left here. He actually also uses touch and a keyboard, all kinds of means of access. And an adapted van, right, with a lower floor and a ramp that comes out so that he can drive a wheelchair and we can go out and do family activities. So these are older pictures of him, but this is what the power chair looks like. This is called a gait trainer. These are things that people use when they're learning to rehab a piece of equipment. They're learning how to walk or take steps. Talk to you about Mass Match. Mass Match is the website of the Assistive Technology and Independent Living Division of Mass Rehabilitation Commission. We receive significant federal funding to provide assistive technology support programs to help people get the assistive technology they need for independent living, community living, and even schools. Okay? So we are not in the business of recommending assistive technology. We don't sell it to assistive technology. We educate people about the kinds of equipment that are out there and help them fund it. So I'm going to tell you about some of the programs we run. Les, Paul, and I are all on the Assistive Technology Advisory Council. I'm there as a family consumer, as is Paul. Les is there as an agency? I don't know. Special guest invited. Special guest. The Commissioner of Mass Rehab is Commissioner Carr. He is a wheelchair user. So I'm going to tell you some of the programs that we operate. The way Mass Rehab works is we fund projects through community partners. One of our larger partners is Easter Seals. Easter Seals runs assistive technology regional demonstration centers. There are centers in Boston, Worcester, and Western Mass. So they have a big inventory. Actually, I think we can click on that, and their inventory is actually online here, I think. Yeah, Easter Seals, here it is, Boston and Pittsfield. They have a big selection of assistive technology available, covering computer, daily living, environmental adaptations, hearing, learning, recreation, speech, and vision products. You can either search online, and if you're looking for something specific, or you can call one of those offices. They offer a device demonstration loan. So you can take out equipment for 30 days and see if that's going to be appropriate for you. They work with a lot of families. They work with a lot of schools. So that's a program that is free of charge to any citizen in Massachusetts. So that's a good one if there's something you're interested in trying out. Low vision instruments. I mean, they don't have to be high tech. They can be low tech things as well. Two of our other projects is a durable, it's an assistive technology, what we call an exchange program. It's called getatstuff.com. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I am going to open another window. And what Get AT Stuff is, it's a collaboration between all the New England states. Is that right? Yeah. No, it's .com. Yeah, I think it's both. Yeah, I think it's .com. It's basically like a Craigslist. So when people are not using their assistive technology, it could be mobility devices, it could be ramps, toileting aids, any kind of equipment. You can go online and see what's available. So you can post by what's available, you can post if you're looking for something that's needed, or you can browse. So let's see what's in. How about daily living? And you can find things that are located close to you by zip code. You can search by keyword. So Mass Match has paid to design this system and keep it up to date, but we do not provide any matching. So it's like Craigslist in the fact that someone has something to offer and you are interested, you contact that person through the system and you make an arrangement. Some of the stuff is free, some of the stuff is low fee, and it's all generally used equipment. But I encourage you to check that out if you are in the need of some kind of assistive technology. You can browse through and see what you might be interested in. We also run the Assistive Technology Loan Program, which is, and related to that is the Home Modification Loan Program. So if you are in a position where you need to make your home either wheelchair accessible or put a fence around your yard for a grandchild who is a wanderer, or make any other modifications, sort of big ticket things, the loan programs are specially set up and managed by Mass Rehab Commission, and they're just much more flexible than going to a bank where if you're in a situation where you need a long loan period, or you don't have the best credit, things like that, which happens a lot to families with a lot of needs. These loan programs are designed, you get a little bit more support than going to a commercial bank. The Home Modification Loan Program is actually a great deal. Part of it is income-based, but it's a low interest loan at 2 or 3%. And if you qualify, they even have 0% loans. Okay, so those would be for making your home or apartment building compatible to people who use mobility equipment. What else? We have a new program. We work with educators called AT School Share. In Massachusetts, children who have special needs and have assistive technology needs are required by their school system to purchase the equipment needed to meet their IEP goals. But as you might imagine, when that child moves on, that equipment sometimes transfers with the student, sometimes it doesn't. And school systems often have rooms full of this technology that's sitting there. So we have developed something called AT School Share, again, which is kind of like Get AT Stuff, but it's for teachers. So they can tell what assistive technology they have available and theoretically share that with other schools if someone was looking for a specific piece of equipment. What else can I tell you about this? A program that I am particularly involved with is this. This is a blog post. That's not going to be too sexy, but we are starting in Massachusetts a durable medical equipment / wheelchair reuse program. We received a funding from the Shapiro Family Foundation, Spalding Rehab, and MRC kicked in some money, and we are taking in donations of gently used late model wheelchairs, commodes, toileting equipment, activities, big pieces, ramps, hospital electric beds, things like that. We have refurbishers around the greater Boston area, and we're cleaning them up, repairing them, putting fresh batteries in them, and giving them out to people in the community in need. So that is starting up sort of imminently, within the next month. It doesn't even have a name yet, actually. It's the DME Reuse Program. But that is available to anyone. Actually, I am the contact person on that, and we take donations. So if you know people who empty out their basements, it's got to be fairly newish type stuff, as you imagine. You're giving it to someone else. So newish equipment, or if you know someone whose wheelchair is broken, which is what happens a lot. Sometimes insurance covers, they will cover a wheelchair, but it might not cover a backup wheelchair, or it might not cover a manual wheelchair if you have a power wheelchair. In their mind, they have just bought you a big fancy $25,000 electric chair. They're not giving you, a transport chair. That's where also toileting equipment, if you know people who need shower chairs and commode thingies with arm rails. I hear that Medicare does not cover those kind of things. So we will have equipment all around the greater Boston area being stored in different locations. As we go forward, I think we have a facility actually in Central Mass where we will have, I don't think it'll be open to the public. You can't go shop there, but you can go on appointment, and we will have wheelchairs and things that people can try out. So that's called the Reuse Program, and the Councils on Aging and Commissions on Disabilities will all get notices when that gets launched, but you guys are hearing it firsthand here. What else? Get AT stuff for educators. We also provide assistive technology to people returning back to work. So the main focus of Mass Rehab Commission is vocational rehab. So we provide services to people with disabilities and help them, gain employment. But if they need to have assistive technology, they need to have transportation to get to that employer. And then if that's part of their work plan, then Mass Rehab will help them and fund some of that equipment that they need to work independently. What else? Resources. Oop. I'm doing this on a weird thing here. Anyways, it's also just a vast lot of information about all kinds of assistive technology. We have a listserv that we run if you're particularly interested in this, either for your agency or you know someone who uses a wide range of AT. You can get our mailing list, and we mail out all kinds of announcements about fairs and expos and things that are coming up where you can try out different kinds of assistive technology. The Abilities Expo was just the end of last month. It's hasn't been to New England in a long time, and it was here at the Boston Convention Center, and they brought in every kind of wheelchair van and all kinds of fancy technology. We also do fund assistive technology resource fairs around the state. Those happen a couple times a year, usually in conjunction with Easter seals. So that's pretty much about what Mass Match does. Les, what else? What else can I think of? Those are our major programs. Get AT Stuff, DME Reuse, Loan Program, Get School Share. And then we fund a variety of other programs such as Les's. I think that's it. But does anyone have any questions? I mean, I can certainly direct you to some resources and things. There's
Does anyone use the Mass Match website, either to get things or to post things?
GetATstuff.com? Yes. It's free to browse. You can go on there without setting up an account, just like Craigslist. But if you want to actually post things or make a transaction, then you have to sign up. It's free, but you just put your email in and set up an account. And the interaction actually happens within the system, like Craigslist. So if you decide to post something on there, you don't never have to put your name and phone number if you don't choose to.
What did you say go on to?
You can look. You could just Google Universal Design. Architects. There are companies that specialize in universal design. It used to be called handicap accessible, right? Now it's sort of a broader term because it's not just for handicapped people. It's for anyone who needs first floor convenient living access. It's usually just a pretty comfortable way to live. So yeah, just go Google universal design and you'll find all kinds of stuff like on that. Again, it runs the large gamut. I mean, I actually run a business called, starting one called Big Picture Care. And I make a very low-tech assistive technology, but picture-based, to help people who have cognitive or communication challenges. So if you've had a stroke, if you have dementia or Alzheimer's, or you have cerebral palsy, and pictures and using visuals are really helpful to help people find their way around their home or communicate or do activities of daily living. But that's all considered assistive technology, as is a power wheelchair or a high-tech communication device that Les showed. So the range of assistive technology is really broad. There's also educational technology, which sometimes gets lumped under assistive technology. It's usually called EdTech. And that is software and websites and access methods. Les showed some of those. You can use joysticks, you can use eye gaze. A lot of that is considered educational technology when it's used to help students gain access to the materials or help them participate in school. So I left, there's a Mass Match brochure up there. Actually, I'll pass one out here. Pass these around if anyone's interested. All these things are free. They're all funded with our federal AT Act money, administered by Mass Match. What brought you all here today? You just interested in the topic, or did you have some particular needs that you were thinking of finding a solution for? Could be, curiosity. Nowadays, iPads have become a huge assistive technology tool. I mean, you know that. Your families all have them. As I said, there's probably hundreds of augmentative communication apps, because my son's an augmentative user, and I thought, oh, great, I'll blog about this, and I'll learn it all. Unless that's your full-time job, you cannot keep up with it. So there's all kinds of software and learning tools, and more for senior and adapted living. And there's got to be a better way to find those things, though, because iTunes is not the best.
I work with a senior who, because she probably has Alzheimer's,
TV remote, and it's a remote that's got all the gazillion buttons
Right.
on it.
They do make simplified ones.
Well, I'm thinking of something like that. If she only had to worry about pressing
Right.
up and down, she wouldn't inadvertently, mess
Right,
up.
right. They definitely do make those. They also make some for kids that are like that. If you've ever seen a kid one, they're small. Do you have any other updates on how to get an easy remote? There are some.
Well, there are a lot of different remotes on the market. Once again, it's a matter of determining what a person's abilities are, and that would indicate to us what's needed. We do a lot of big button remotes. That little remote that I mentioned up there that I have a few of, there is a big button version of that which has a small number of buttons, but each of the buttons is large. We also modify conventional remotes to simply change between a small number of channels. Instead of channel up, which can take you through God only knows how many channels these days, if a person only uses 2 or 3 channels, then every press of that button simply moves to one an additional favorite. Most of the time in my house we're watching channel 10, channel 12, channel 6. That's pretty much channel 36 maybe, and that's it. The rest of them, you just, those that you go by in the process of hoping you're going to find something good on. But the thing that I found was the more channels there are, just the longer it takes to find out there's nothing worth watching.
Right.
One of the problems in my field is that if you don't read your morning mail, you're automatically obsolete. So let me take 30 seconds to tell you about what this morning's mail was. 2 researchers, I believe they are in Colorado, I know they're both faculty members, are applying for a patent on a device to tell when someone has fallen and automatically summon help. Now, this is going to involve, right now it involves 24 sensors within a person's home, but the person doesn't wear anything. It simply is looking out to see what's moving and at what level is that something moving. So if something was moving 4 feet off the floor and suddenly there is nothing moving 4 feet off the floor, then it says maybe we ought to look at the sensors that are on the floor and see what's going on there. So this morning's email from the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers has an article on this patent application for a home modification, which becomes the new help, I've fallen and I can't get up. But this time there's no need to push a button on a pendant, nor is there any need to even wear a pendant. My guess is that in the not too distant future, we're all going to be wearing a pendant of some kind. Unfortunately, I think if you look 40 years into the future, when a child is born, they're going to have a chip implanted.
Put a chip in you, yeah.
And that's
Like a
going to
dog.
pretty much tell where you are, who you are, where you're going, what your medical records are, how much you make. This will be your debit card, credit card, medical card, and every other card that's imaginable, and you're not going to have a choice. But I'm not going to be around to see that. But today, you can certainly do a lot with this technology that involves what's called RFID. That little tag that's on the expensive clothing that you go out to buy that has to be removed by the sales clerk before you can take it home, is being used by Walmart to track inventory. They can tell you when something left China and where in the ocean it is and how many there are and whether the case has been opened and so on down the line. And those RFID tags automatically tell the people who, when the boat arrives at the shore, where to send it, and then they know what truck to load it on and what plane it goes on and where it is in the store and so on and so on. RFID is just an amazing piece of technology. We use RFID, Pat and I, unfortunately, almost every time we leave home, because it's sitting in the transponder that's up in the windshield. It charges us 10 cents every time we cross the Secana River Bridge. Other people are taking the transponders and wrapping them in aluminum foil, and they find that's not saving them anything anyway, because the camera says, okay, no transponder, not a problem. We'll just photograph your license plate, and we'll send you a bill based on that. So Big Brother is certainly out there watching. 1984. Yep, it was a little late in coming, but we're reaping the benefits of it today. Again, I'd like to thank Paul for setting this up for us today. And both Randy and I will be around for a while. If you have some additional questions, we would be happy to attempt to answer them for you. My guess is that if she doesn't have the answer, that someone here does. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.